get out to the Yingling guest hotline and say hi to our buddy Tom Thayer. He's brought to you as always by Humana. And he joins Carmen and Jurko now as he does each and every Tuesday. That was a hell of a win. They're not all. Jurko says they don't always have to be a Picasso, Tom. You just got to get the W, and they got the W on Sunday.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with Jurko. You know, as we were flying back, Jeff looked at me across the aisle on the plane. He goes, "Man, that was fun." And I go, "No, it wasn't. That was no fun at all." You know, you sit on the edge of your seat, you know, waiting for something like that to happen, but you still have that frustration of what happened in the early portion of the game with what Max Crosby was single-handedly doing. You get a couple of interceptions, you get the ball in your territory, and you don't get touchdowns out of it. So, hey, listen, man, I was flying high as soon as Josh Blackwell made, you know, that blocked field goal. But up until then, you know, I was on the edge of my seat going, damn, let's get something done here and try to, you know, win this game. You give up 240 yards rushing, and your running game is, you know, only produced 69 yards. So I had a lot of numbers lingering in my head on that flight, but believe me, I was happy to get on that flight with a win.
Yeah. All right, you mentioned Max Crosby. Let's start there in the first half and what went wrong. I mean, it seemed like it really was. It came down to a big execution problem, communication problem. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind would, for 1 second, think that the Bears went into the game not knowing that Max Crosby was going to be playing on one side of the Raiders' defensive line. It just, from an X's and O's standpoint, I'm not smart enough to be able to look at it and tell you what exactly was going wrong. You try to tell us. I mean, what happened there, and why did the plan backfire so badly in the first half?
You know, to me, if I'm going to play against a guy like Max Crosby, I'm, first of all, on pass protection, I'm going to attack him and close the distance. The last thing you want to do is significantly back out of your stance and give that separation of Max Crosby and let him be the hand fighter and the athlete he wants to be. At 6'5", 255 pounds, if I know the snap count, I'm going to close that distance immediately, and I'm going to confront him at the line of scrimmage, and I'm going to slow his process down. And then if he starts going stunts and loops with other guys, then you got to work in you have to work with your offensive guard or tight end, whomever you're working at. And if I'm looking at Max Crosby, the run stopper, I am going to relentlessly attack him from every angle possible. And if I'm going to get an offensive tackle that outweighs him by 50 pounds, I'm going to challenge his strength at the point of attack. And whether it's a double team with a guard or a double team with a tight end, I'm going to make Max Crosby physically fight me. I'm not going to allow him to do, and that's being an athlete pass rusher rather than a physical run stopper and pass rusher.
When you look at the Bears' defensive line and the way they played the other day, allowing Ashton Genty just to carve them up for so many yards, and the Raiders' offense, you played O-line. You'd be chomping at the bit to get up against this defensive line. What is wrong on the other side of football?
You know, believe me, I would take more advice from you than from me. But the thing about it is, are the guys in place drafted to play this style of defense? And when you look at an Andrew Billings,
they're not two-gappers.
Right.
These guys are over-under penetrators, yard and a half, and then pursuit of the ball.
There you go. You're smarter than me as far as
you can't two-gap. Billingsley had success in the game. Billings, I should say. And he had success penetrating at the line of scrimmage, not trying to two-gap and watch the screws and move laterally down the offensive line. That's not who we have here.
Right, and early in the game, I think when they ran a quarterback sneak and then they tried to go for it on fourth down, Billings blew up the center.
Yep, he did.
And he was in the backfield making plays.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to feed more reps to Shamar Turner, because when you look at him, he had 2 tackles in assist, a tackle for loss. But the guy I need to see more out of is Dexter Sr. He was credited with 1 assisted tackle on the stat sheet. And when you look at Javon Dexter, what his is where is his asset? What is he gonna be best at? And he's got to be a guy like Calais Campbell that's able to separate with his length, disengage, and be able to try to make plays. And this is what I think the suffering is even though you have the defensive linemen, I think the linebackers are suffering. Because if you're going to play a two-gap style and you get a guy like Billings who can hold off two offensive linemen and give a little bit more freedom to the linebackers, and then they can make plays at or up near the line of scrimmage as well. But if you're having these linebackers that have to fight off blockers from the point of attack to the backside, it's going to be difficult for those guys to have multiple tackles.
Yeah.
And Tremaine Edmonds, again, he was the leading tackler with 11 combined tackles. And then the next leading linebacker in combined tackles was Noah Sewell with 5. And so I think it's more of a formulation of how those front athletes can complement the second level. But, I heard you say, when I was listening to you about the blitzing ability of a guy like Kyler Gordon.
Yeah.
I think he's super creative, and I think he brings a variety of blitz rushes rather than just kind of running into a blocker and trying to beat him. You're not going to do that if you're a third-level blitzer. And hopefully Austin Booker gets healthy after the break along with T.J. Edwards, and they can offer a variety to the fronts, and T.J. Edwards can get back in the mix like he has been the last few years.
There's a second page also to, the two-gap style or to the penetrating style. When you play that aggressive over-under 4-3, I think things get defined more clearly for the linebackers as opposed to them having some ambiguity. Like you see the two gap,
because they have
and
to
you got to
read
take it
each
up.
gap. Is that right?
Well, you're reading what's happening in front of you.
In front of you, right?
You theoretically have something to do, but I think things get defined better when you're playing a more penetrating style defense, which makes life easier for your linebackers. And 49's tackles, Edmonds in the game, they were a quiet 11. A quiet 11 tackles because none of them were happening behind the line of scrimmage.
Right.
None of them were happening in area impact. They were happening that somebody had to get there to take the ball carrier down after he had gained a ton of yards, and he happened to be the guy that was there to do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is when you have a linebacker or a safety that's the leading tackler in the game. Kevin Byard was second. Tyreek Stevenson was third in tackles. I think that really kind of questions what the offense is doing to you if you don't have a defensive lineman of some merit that's within the first 4 to 5 tacklers in the game. I think that's telling you a little bit something what's going on. And today, I've never shied away from this. I'm not 100% in agreement with the footwork that's taught to zone blocking lines.
Right.
You don't like it.
Yeah, and I do think that you can put your defensive lineman in an advantage position pre-snap to try to take advantage of some of this. And, I like anything, you're going to have to see going forward because as the Bears are getting better, the offenses that you're going to be playing against are going to be getting better as well. So it's something that you got to be able to, increase your performance incrementally in this last 13-game stretch.
Okay, why can't they run the ball, Tom?
Man, I just think, and I'm not going to use, I know the offensive line, they got to, develop that continuity and stuff. But again, you got to be committed to earning the point of attack, and that you have to have movement, and you got to be consistent about that. Because if you look at the runs in the game, you look at how many times the running backs and every team is guilty of this, how many times the running backs cut back to an unblocked tackler because you're going to be facing a 7 or 8 man line of scrimmage. And if you're not getting movement at the point of attack that the running back is willing to commit to, you're not giving the offensive line that pre-snap confidence that they're going to have a 3-yard impact at the point of attack, and then they got to be physical as they conclude the run. So I do think it's about being able to develop a more physical style of play. And I think after this bye week, we'll get a look at the offensive tackle position and what they think is going to happen going forward. and thinking if the 5 guys that they put out there, I don't think Darnell Wright is going to lose his job to an elbow injury,
right.
but they're going to have to make a decision at that left tackle position. And if the starting guy that they decide on is Theo Benedette, who is going to be your swing tackle then? And then if it is Braxton Jones, a swing tackle, they're going to have to start feeding him some reps at right tackle in practice to make sure that he becomes comfortable with that right-handed stance, because he's been in a left-handed stance since he's been here.
It's a good point. Like, is Trapillo go back to being inactive, or is he the swing guy if indeed it's Benedette and Wright? That's a very good question.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a trial and hopefully not error type of evaluation there, because if you look at Ozzie Trapillo, he does give you a more of a physical presence when he's on the field, and I think that's what they're starving for. Because going back to the question about what's wrong with the running game, I think that you got to be able to have a more physical approach to the committed running plays that you have. And I do think over time that Caleb will be more in control of the snap count, especially at home. And you'll probably see a more productive offensive line when they become in tune, in rhythm with Caleb's repeated cadences.
Yeah. All right, Tommy, you've seen that stadium before. You guys have been out there. Do you ever get to, like, you're locked in on game day, I get that, but do you get to appreciate some of the newer stadiums and just the amenities? It was our first time there. That stadium's pretty sweet.
Oh, it is. You know, back to the first time we went to there, we started that season at SoFi. And then we went to SoFi and got a look at that. And then we got a look at the stadium in Las Vegas. To me, I like the stadium in Las Vegas better because, unlike Dallas, there's no obtrusive scoreboard up there that holds your attention more than watching the field. And then SoFi, when we went out there, we actually had a lightning delay because the stadium is not enclosed, and it's built more like University of Michigan Stadium, where it's ground level and dug into the earth, and it's not from level earth built upward. So it's kind of a different type of a feature when you walk into the stadium.
That's wild. All right, buddy. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll catch up next week, okay?
All right, go Bears. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Tom. There's Tom Thayer, brought to you by Humana, committed to putting health first, making it easier for people to get the care and support they need when they need it most. To learn more, visit localhumana.com.